What's up, everyone? Let's see. Sup, Lizzie? Alright. Got notifications out, and looks like we got our first guest here. Welcome, everyone. There we go.
Hello.
Hello, can you hear me all right?
Yes, sir. Good morning. How you doing today?
I'm doing all right. Are you at least over the age of 18?
19.
All right. What brings you up here today?
Because I usually see you up here, you know what I'm saying, sometimes. And I just wanted to see, like, why do you think is, like, belief in God is rational? Because for me, I feel like there isn't a singular, a singular, like, evidence, like, there isn't no really any physics that can, like, that's, like, evidence to figure out, like, what is God made of, you know what I'm saying, or any real evidence that really not points, any real evidence that's, like, I guess, like, how should I explain it? I guess any real evidence that's, like, of God existence that we really, like, have, like, singular evidence instead of something else pointing towards his existence.
Yeah, so let me ask you this. So, a lot of people mistake evidence for physical data, as in, like, they think that the only type of evidence that can exist is physical data. But evidence can also be comprised of logical arguments and logical syllogisms. Are you familiar with the difference of valid and sound?
No. Can you, some?
Yeah, so when you have a valid argument, this is an argument where if the premises are true, then the conclusion necessarily follows from those premises. Basically, what it means is that there's no fallacy that's committed. But because we don't know if the premises are true or not, we don't know if the conclusion is true. Versus a sound argument, where the premises are true, therefore we know that the conclusion must be true, because all sound arguments are valid arguments. Have you heard the famous logical argument of all men are mortal, Socrates is a man, therefore Socrates is mortal?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So let's pick, another human being that we haven't experienced, the death of.
Mm-hmm.
Technically speaking, we don't have evidence that this individual is mortal, but because all men are mortal and this individual is a man, we know, even though we don't have evidence or experienced his mortality, we know that he is mortal. Does that make sense?
No.
Okay.
I guess how do we know? I don't understand. I don't understand the whole premises. Can I say the part I don't understand?
Yeah, absolutely.
I think I'm gonna have to go back. What evidence do we have that he's mortal?
From the premise one, all men are mortal. By the definition of man, we know that they are mortal beings. So let me
Mortal
another.
beings as in.
They will die.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And so because this individual is a man, he also has all the properties of being a man, which includes the properties of being mortal. So even if we haven't experienced this particular individual's mortal death or mortality, because of the first premise, we know that he is mortal. And what this gets into is the fact of the matter that logical arguments, as long as they are valid, which means that it follows from the premises, and one it believes the premise, at least believes the premises to be true and has good reason to believe the premises to be true, then that leads them to requiring them to accept the conclusion. With your earlier statement, I'm assuming you have a great love of science and you're very familiar with physics, right?
Somewhat, not very much so. Somewhat.
Okay, not a problem. I'm assuming then you are you at least familiar then that within physics there's two different positions in regards to how time, basically how much time there is. There's some who say that there was a finite beginning point, a first moment, which, and then there's others who say that there was no first moment of time, that the universe has an infinite amount of time and there's an infinite past. There is no way to prove definitively which one is true, because as soon as we get to the Planck moment, we can't go back any further. So we don't know if there is another moment before that, or if that actually is the first moment. That's just our limit.
But I'm not trying to say like I'm neutral. I don't really know, but I guess I seen this on TikTok. They said like, how can something come from nothing?
Well,
Wouldn't it always have
yeah.
to exist?
So that's a different conversation than what I'm getting at, and the point that I'm getting at here. Like you said, you are neutral. You're not sure, like if the Planck moment is the first moment, or if there's other moments before that. That's just the limit, and you're okay saying, "Hey, I don't know." But there's a lot of scientists and a lot of physicists who will say, take a position, and they have justifications for that position, even though there's no way for them to prove their position definitively one way or another. So the first thing is that rationality is not equal to truth. Someone can be rational and still hold a wrong conclusion. Someone can be irrational and hold the right conclusion, but rationality is just a tool to refer to that one is using logic and reason to arrive at the conclusion versus an appeal to emotion, essentially.
Can I say something real quick? So I think my brain is starting to heat up, because like I'm thinking right now, okay, we're somewhat able to like examine the universe, you know what I'm saying? So my question is, how would it be how would it be rational to believe in the God if we can't examine it? Like we're able, I could see like why some of them might say it will be this, because we're able to examine it. They're able to come up with different arguments because so how do you examine a God and don't have any evidence for existence so we can examine it? And you know, if you understand what I'm saying. I don't really.
And that's what I was getting. And that's what I was getting at is that.
Okay, go ahead.
It is like logic is the way for us to examine it. So we're able to take different things and apply logic and reasoning to it to arrive to different conclusions. And if the premises are true and the logic is valid, then we know the conclusion to be true. So, so the argument that I'm working on, and it still needs a little bit of work, but let me at least get it pulled up on screen.
Yeah, my brain's still kind of heated.
But the biggest the biggest thing to understand is
It's just like if we're not able to examine something, how do you like if you're not able to examine something and not able to study it, how are you gonna be like it's rational to believe in it? I know why some of them say, you know what I'm saying, they must be a start or it could exist because we're actually able to have, I guess they have evidence for it and they are able to examine it. So how can you say it's rational to you know what I'm saying, believe in God if we're not even able to have evidence or examine him? I don't see how you could come to that conclusion. My brain is heating up. That makes no sense.
yeah. So that's what I'm getting at. So
Okay.
premise one: something has always existed. Do you agree or disagree with that premise?
As in,
Just in something has always existed. That there was never a case where there was nothing that existed.
I'm gonna have to say, yeah.
Okay. So the second one. Now, to define terms a little bit, dependent means that it requires something external to it in order for it to exist. Independent just means not dependent, aka it doesn't require anything external to it in order for it to exist. So because something has always existed, in order for that to be the case, there needs to be at least one independent thing. Do you agree or disagree?
I'm neutral. I don't know.
So so your position is that the universe always your idea is like the universe always existed, or at least should always exist, and the universe itself is not dependent on anything outside of the universe to explain the universe, correct?
Say that again.
Do you think the universe has something outside of it that explains the existence of the universe?
I don't. How are we supposed to look outside of the universe? Would
Well,
that be
no, but
possible?
no, that's what I'm asking you. Is either the universe has something
I
external
can't. Yeah, but I can't. How am I supposed to answer that if we can't look outside the universe?
because we're applying logic and reason. Either
But how we're supposed? That doesn't make any sense. How are you supposed to make me answer the question and we can't go outside the universe?
because logic. So there's only
That
two
doesn't.
possible.
That
There's
doesn't.
only
This is
Kirby.
heating up my brain.
Kirby. There's only two possibilities here. Either the universe requires something else, or it doesn't. Can you
This
think
is
of a
heating
third
up my
option?
brain. This is. I mean, why does it specifically have to be a god?
I didn't say God. At no point have I said God yet.
But it's still heating on my brain. How am I supposed to answer this question if we can't leave the universe?
Lots.
I'm gonna have to stay neutral. I'm gonna
No,
have to stay
a
neutral
lot
on
of
this one.
atheists and a lot of people who don't believe in God say that the universe, including a lot of scientists, say that that it's possible for the universe to have always existed and not require anything external to the universe in order for it to exist. That's a valid position to hold. So I'm just asking what your position is.
My position is neutral. I don't know how we can say if there's something outside the universe if we can't go outside the universe.
All right, so let me apply my justification for this then, for this particular premise. Duh, 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 duh. All right. So, like I was saying, we've got things are either premise one. Things are either dependent or independent for their existence. This is just from the definition. Things either have an external reason for them to exist, or they don't. That's just the law of non-contradiction and the law of excluded middle.
Wait, say that one more time. You
Things
said
are either dependent, which means that they require something external for them in order for them to exist. For example, you require your parents in order for you to exist. So you are dependent. Or it's possible for something to not have those dependents. That's just the law of non-contradiction and the law of excluded middle.
okay. I see.
Premise two, either everything that exists is independent, everything that exists is dependent, or there's a mixture of the two. And again, this is just like if I say there are only dogs and not dogs. Either everything is a dog, nothing is a dog, or there's some mixture of dogs and not dogs. That's just all of the possibilities.
I see.
Okay.
I see. Uh-huh.
Now, we observe dependent things. Like I said, you and I were dependent things. So therefore, not everything is independent. That is, we can trivially show that that position is false. So now, let's explore the second option. What if everything is dependent? If everything is dependent, then everything would require an external explanation. That external explanation, because that too would be dependent, would itself be dependent and require further explanation. This creates a vicious infinite regress, which cannot exist in logic and reality. Therefore, it cannot be the case that everything is dependent. Therefore, there must be at least one independent thing.
Do we have evidence of anything?
All we know is
Are we
that
able to examine it?
That's the next step, is we will examine what enables a thing to be independent. Let me ask you this. From the sounds of it, you're claiming that unless I can see, smell, taste, touch it, it doesn't exist, or I can't know anything about it, correct?
Say it again.
Is your position that unless I can see, smell, taste, touch, or measure it in some way, I can't know it? Is that your position?
Whatever you to go on mute and think about this real quick, if that's fine with you.
What did you say?
Whatever you to go on mute and think about that. The question you said for a minute.
I mean, that's what I'm trying to understand, because you came up here saying, hey, how can I know something unless these things? And so I'm confirming, is this your position? Is it your position that unless I'm able to have physical data, empirical data, where I can see, smell, taste, touch, hear, or measure it in some way, then I can't know anything about that? Is that your position?
I'm gonna say yes. Yes.
Okay. Can we experience or interact with infinity?
As in,
The concept infinity. The answer is no. We cannot, according to your metrics, we cannot see, smell, taste, touch, or even measure infinity.
Are we not able to examine it?
No. Not in the metrics that you prescribed. An example of this is Hilbert's Hotel. No hotel.
I mean, as in like do mathematics. Can it be examined through mathematics and like logic?
But that's what I'm doing right here, which you are saying we can't use that because we're not able to measure.
That's my whole thing. Yeah, measure as in using mathematics.
And logic. And logic.
Yeah.
This is logic right here that we were going over. Logic is more than just mathematics. And that's why I was asking you about the difference between valid and sound. Because using logic is being rational. And the question then becomes, is the logic being used correctly? And when I was asking, either the universe is dependent or it's independent, I wasn't necessarily asking you to pick a particular position. Just do you agree that those are the only two positions? And you had said, well, we
can I
can't
ask a
know.
curious, my fault. Can I ask a curious question? What happened if it's both? Like, let's say something like
That's the law of
I just wanna
excluded
ask.
middle. That's the
Okay.
law of excluded middle. It cannot be both because dependent and independent are contradictions of each other. Like married and bachelor are contradictions of each other. So you can't have someone that's both a married bachelor because of the law of excluded middle.
Wait, you said explain the last point you said. You said
Yeah.
about the main
You-
point.
Yeah. So you have married, right? And you have bachelor. And a bachelor is defined as man who is not married. So can you have a married bachelor?
Married bachelor.
Someone who is both married and not married.
I guess in some ways should be not possible. I don't know.
It's impossible because of the law of non-contradiction. And the law of excluded middle says that because of the law of non-contradiction, something can only either be one or the other. Therefore, you cannot have someone that is both married and not married.
Because let's say that you're married to someone, but you're cheating with them, and your other
You're
partner
still
doesn't
married.
know.
You're still married.
Can you explain that?
Yeah, like
Because wouldn't you have broken the, I forgot what to call it.
the marital vows, but you're
Yeah.
still like you violating the marital vows doesn't nullify the marriage.
What? Huh? That makes no sense. What do you mean?
Because until you get the divorce contract, then you're still married. And even if you are correct that as soon as you violate it, now you're no longer married, so you're never both at the same time. That's the question that I was asking is it possible to be both married and not married at the same time?
I'm gonna have to disagree with you on that one, based on my own opinion about what I said.
I mean, that's just,
I know your argument sounds better, but I'm gonna have to disagree.
I mean, that's logic 101.
I'm gonna have to disagree with you on that.
I would then strongly recommend you look online and look at some logic YouTube videos because married bachelor is the quintessential example of the law of non-contradiction and the law of excluded middle. Like this isn't something that's contested or able to be disagreed on. If you disagree with what I just said, that's not a thing about like disagreeing with a theist. That is disagreeing with logic itself.
I'm still gonna disagree with the married part.
I mean, you might want to do some research then.
I think maybe that was for me. Not to offend. I think that was probably a bad analogy. Maybe use another one.
It's not that it's a bad analogy. It's that
I said it's a bad analogy. Maybe for me.
okay. Is it possible for a shape to have four sides and no sides? Did you hear me, Kirby? So is it possible for a shape to have four sides and for a shape to have no sides?
Um, I guess my piece. He said in the comments that will be a fifth dimensional object. Wouldn't that? I'm just asking. Wouldn't that not be a fifth? You know what I'm saying?
No,
It wouldn't.
because
Okay.
no, because a fifth dimensional object is talking about a fifth side. So I'm asking, is it possible for a shape to have four sides and no sides? In other words, is it possible for something to be a circle and a square at the same time? And my pieces, as you said, all sides are on display at once. The question I'm asking is zero sides. There's no sides, and yet you're saying sides. That's the contradiction.
Okay. Yes. No, it can be. It can be.
Okay. So the law of excluded middle then says a shape can either only have zero sides or four sides. It can't have both at the same time.
Wait, you're telling me or asking me?
Well, I'm telling you that's what the law of excluded middle says, which is what you were disagreeing with earlier. And I'm trying to show you that this is the very foundational aspect of logic.
Keep going. Keep going.
So you were asking, could the universe not be both dependent and independent? No, because dependent, by definition, requires something external to it. Independent, by its definition, is not dependent. So it is the contradiction or negation of dependent, and it would be a contradiction to say that the universe is both at the same time. And the law of excluded middle says that it can only be one or the other.
Okay. Okay.
So like I said, it sounds like, you've
No,
got
no.
a great
I'm
passion
agreeing
for
with
this.
you. I thought
Yeah.
I thought you were gonna
Yeah.
keep
No,
going.
what I was going to say is like, it sounds like you've got a great passion for this stuff. And I want to encourage that. But from the sounds of it, though, you've got a lot to learn in regards to like the rules and function of logic. Because when we're starting to get into the metaphysics, which is what the question of God is, it is a category error to try to use science to try to talk about metaphysics, just like it's a category error to try to use science to talk about math, or to use science to talk about justice, or to use science to, talk about art theory. Science is a great and wonderful tool, don't get me wrong. But there's different tools available to us to explore different categories of knowledge. So I would greatly encourage you to explore those other categories. But, all right. Well, it was a pleasure talking with you, Kirby. I'm going to go ahead and move on with the next guest, all right? All right. And my pieces, I do have someone else that was waiting before you. I'm going to do them. I understand what you're talking about. The point that I was trying to get him to understand, that the topology would have, I feel like, confused the conversation, is focusing on the law of non-contradiction, the law of excluded middle.
Yo, what's going on, bro?
Hey, how's it going, Alex?
Good. Here's my question, I guess. Are you like talking like contingency And is there a way to do that without a modality collapse?
So it would depend on the particular type of argument and what you're concerned with. The more I've looked into the particular arguments that and theological background that I hold to, I'm not concerned with a modal collapse.
Why not?
The reason being is because the modal collapse is talking about whether or not the universe could have been different. And I'm perfectly okay saying that no, the universe could not have been different. The question that I'm concerned about is dependency.
Okay, could you genuinely please just run me through your argument or whatever it is? Because I've become an expert in contingency, and then there's this modality collapse thing, and I just am screwed.
So let me ask you this: what theological background do you come from?
I'm Catholic.
Okay, all right. So
I'm just trying to get into theism, but yeah, I just keep getting.
So the thing to understand about Catholic, I'm assuming then you've explored a lot of Thomas Aquinas' arguments then in the different ways, correct? So the thing to understand about Thomas Aquinas is he, when he's talking about necessary and contingency, he's not talking about it in the same way that modal logic uses necessary and contingent. Modal logic uses necessary and contingent to mean contingent, something that could be different. It's possible for it to have been different, whereas necessary is talking about it is impossible to be different. Now, Thomas Aquinas, when he's using necessary and contingent, he's talking about it where about dependency, essentially. I am contingent on my parents and matter and space-time and gravity and air and all of these different things that enable me to exist. I am dependent on them existing in order for me to exist. And so that's what he means by
causation you're talking about, kind of?
Yes, an ontological relationship, yeah. And that's what he's talking about by contingency. And then necessary is something that isn't dependent on anything external to it. It is its own ontological grounding. That's what he means by necessary. And in fact, I believe it's in the third way, where he talks about it is possible, and here he's kind of using the modal terminology here a little bit, that it's possible for something to receive its necessity from something else.
So but P equals P and P entails Q? Kind of, yeah. Type of thing? Okay.
Yep, and he's saying, and that's perfectly fine, but you still ultimately end up at the need of a thing that it is its own necessity. It doesn't get its necessity from something else. And especially when you start looking into what he talks about with fittingness, if God has an eternal plan that's perfect and and is going to achieve it, then the act that he's taking arrives at that goal, and that is the perfect way to achieve that goal.
Okay.
So the modal collapse
modality. You would just reject,
It's not that I would reject modality. I would say that's fine. That's not a concern for me. Because
wouldn't this kind of lead you into a necessarian thing, which would almost kind of be contradictory to Catholicism?
Not really, because that gets into how Catholicism understands and defines free will, as well as how especially classical theism understands God's omnipresent. All of time and all of reality is present and real to God right now. So God has omniscience of our future actions, not because he's foreseeing it, but because he's already experienced it. A good example of this, I think, honestly, is Dr. Manhattan from Watchmen. There's a scene in there where he tells his wife that we're going to climb this tower and you're going to tell me that, you've been cheating on me with so-and-so, blah, 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 blah. And then they go up and she admits to him, you're right, I have been cheating on you with blah, 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 blah. And there's this look of hurt and betrayal on Dr. Manhattan's face. And she's so confused because it's like, but how, why? He already knew it because I told him, he told me about it. But the reason why he knew about it was because that was the moment in time that she told him. Dr. Manhattan experiences time effectively all at once. And so God knows our action because, in a sense, we've already done it, but we're the actualizers. We're the ones that make
And
that
this
action.
is the most like accepted theory of time right now, right?
Yes.
Kind
yes.
of. Okay. And then I guess so this is good. So I can just throw modality out the window. But
I wouldn't say throw modality out the window, because modality is a very specific logical language that talks about possibility. And what Aquinas is talking about is dependency. So both of these language systems are using the same terms, but are using it in a different way. Okay. My advice to you isn't to throw modality out the window, but to throw contingent and necessary out the window, because they are used by the modal system so completely nowadays. Use dependency and independency as I've been using it, because that's what Aquinas is talking about, and you'll avoid that confusion. Because again, like if they try to bring up the modal collapse, again, like I said, based on my reading of Thomas Aquinas, like he just kind of shrug and say, yeah, that's fine. That's not really what I'm concerned with right now, though.
Okay, so you're not concerned with that. Okay. And then I guess my last question. Okay, so actually you did actually ask that free will question, actually answer that extraordinarily well. All right, well, I'll let you get back to it. I'm gonna DM you some of my arguments that I've been working on, and if you want to look at them, I really appreciate it. But keep doing your thing.
Yeah, send me a DM. But what I'll do though is I'll also send you an invite to my Discord. That way, then it's a little bit easier to communicate, and I'm more than happy. That's part of the reason why I'm doing all of this.
Because it's really hard to find like theists who are like really into the philosophy of it, and like less of like the like. I find a lot of time like on TikTok they hinge on like the theological side of it and a historical aspect, and then on the atheist side it's just all philosophy. So then it's like I cannot contend with that. So this is what I've been trying to figure out. But yeah, I'll DM you, man. Thank you so much for having me up, man. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. You have a good one. All right. And yeah, like I was saying, if anyone wants to join the Discord, it is an interfaith Discord. And I'm more than happy to have people join in. The whole purpose of it is, basically people who like my content and the way that I'm having conversations. Like I said, there is a link tree that you can copy and paste into a web browser to get my TikTok, YouTube, and my Discord, or you can just send me a DM and I'll be more than happy to get you that Discord link. But it is an interfaith community. The purpose of it is just to have conversations just like I've been having up here this morning. Hello?
Yo, how's it going?
What's up?
Topology. Topology's great, man. You got to look into topology.
Yep. I've looked into it a little bit. The purpose of me using that example wasn't necessarily to get into like the 5D topology type stuff. It was just more to explain in a way that he could understand the law of non-contradiction, the law of excluded middle. I do understand that like in 5-dimensional shapes, the way that it appears to us is going to be different than, what it actually is. But the way that I had phrased my language it wasn't about how it appears to us. It was, is it possible for something to have 0 sides and have 4 sides? And even if it appears to us to have
a law of contradiction,
yeah. And so it wasn't bringing in a language of appearance. Like, Do I agree that it's possible for something to appear to us as having, you know, 4 sides, but actually having 0, or vice versa? Sure. But that's not the same as actually having 0 and actually having 4.
Yeah, I mean, it depends on your definitions, really, at that point. Like,
Yeah,
we're bordering on the semantics sort of side of things, which I really do want to avoid the semantics side of things, so I'm going to agree with you.
Yeah, and like I said, this wasn't me trying to bring in like topology, but I do appreciate you know, your comments in the chat and everything else, and you coming up. But yeah, the purpose of me using that example was, for some reason, he didn't understand the married bachelor example, and that was just the first thing that came to mind.
But I mean, it does sort of call into question the actual location, the actual reality of God. I mean, to be if you're going to put, I mean, like to say that God does exist or doesn't exist, you've got to define God. At the end of the day, do you agree?
Yeah, and the argument that I was going through, it eventually, and like I was talking about with Alex, the last guest. The particular school of thought that I come from, and how Thomas Aquinas and most, if not all, classical theism understands God to be, the arguments that they use all arrive at defining God as existence qua existence, meaning that, like if I was to ask you, hey, what are you? You would describe your different attributes, such as like, you know, I am a human being and blah, 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 blah. Whereas if I was to ask God what he is, his answer would just be, I exist. That's it. There's no other attributes to that.
If there's no other attributes, though, he doesn't exist. If you have a thing that you can't define, that doesn't exist. That's not real.
Well, no, that's what I'm saying is like the identity, what his definition is existence.
A concept. But what I'm saying is mathematics is a real thing that we can discuss and we can talk for hours and hours and hours about.
Yeah.
But if I was to ask you to hand me a mathematics, it doesn't exist. And that's exactly where you're landing God, is in that theoretical sense.
Not really, because of the way that the argument works, because it shows, like I had gotten to the need of an independent thing, and then the next question was going to be, what is the nature or identity of this independent thing? And that's the part of the argument that I still need a little bit of work on. I actually presented it to Dr. Blitz and Justin from Deconstruction Zone back when, I think it was 2 Sundays ago now.
So you can't define what you believe in. Is that what is that what you're saying?
No, I'm saying that I can. I still need a little bit of work on the argument, because it's not that the argument itself is necessarily invalid, but there were 2, maybe 3 worldviews that I didn't account for, because I'm trying to make this a worldview independent argument that anyone can follow and accept.
You're calling it an
regardless.
argument, and I'm asking a question. It's not I'm not contesting it. I'm asking you.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying is the argument gets to the definition of God, with the definition of God being that whose identity is its own existence.
But that's a non-descriptive. That's like me saying, I believe in flufflewamples. And I just made that word up.
So, if I say a dog is a dog,
Yeah.
that's still telling us something. It's the law of identity. When you get down to
define the identity. If you say I believe in Dobermans, like I believe you, but if you say I believe in dogs, there's like 100 different types of dog.
right, but what I'm getting at
And
is
you're not saying I believe in dog. You're saying I believe in Dobermans because you're very, very specific about which type of religion you follow.
so for this particular conversation, like the only reason why I touched on the Catholicism side of things with Alex was because he was asking me a question as a fellow Catholic. But when I'm talking about like the belief in God is rational, I'm just talking about the generic philosophical God, essentially. And in regard,
Generalized
like,
term for an omnipotent being.
well, not even that, because it's also going to depend on how one understands like divine simplicity, omnipotence, and things like that. By God, I just mean the ultimate foundational grounding of all of reality.
So
Now,
you
I'm
believe in
assuming.
reality. Why don't you just
Do I-
say I believe in reality instead of I
mean,
believe in that
I
word?
do believe in reality, but I also believe that there is an ultimate foundational grounding to all of it. The way that I like to describe God's relationship to reality is similar to the unprovably true things from Gödel's incompleteness theorem that are the foundational aspects for the rest of whatever system it's operating within. God is that true thing that doesn't rest on anything else.
Why?
Because every system has a foundation. That's either the universe itself is its own foundation or it's not. If it is its own foundation, then sure, yeah, there's no God. But if it's not its own foundation, then there's something else that is providing that foundation. And either that thing is its own foundation or it's not. If it's not, then it becomes a vicious infinite regress until eventually you get to something that is its own foundation. But most people who deny the existence of God say that the universe is that foundational thing because
So
the buck
you
stops
agree.
at the universe.
So you agree at one point, if you keep tracking back, it's going to be of its own foundation.
Yeah, and some people claim that that's the universe. I don't think it is because I don't think the universe fits the criteria for something to be its own grounding. But that's where I'm at on my third premise for the argument that I'm working on.
But what I'm asking is, why do you believe in a theology made by a guy 2,000 years ago in a universe that's like, what, 68 billion years old? I mean, like, for instance, if you were to take the life of a human being and compare it to the life of the universe, that religion that you're following is like a camera flash in the last blip of the second of the
And
of
the
person,
scientific method has existed for far less. So if you're going to be using the camouflage or the blip as a way to discredit knowledge or awareness of the universe, then it seems like at science falls to that as well. Heck, even mathematics is only slightly older than Christianity.
So
in the grand scheme of things.
the thing about science is that the ultimate answer to science is I don't know.
And
And it's only when you find something out and you're like, I actually know this.
yeah. And the thing
that
with,
you
especially
turn around and say
within,
that is science.
well, the thing is that
If not,
even
it's called a theory.
well, no, like the evolutionary theory is something that science says, yeah, no, we know that this is the case.
No, theory is a theory.
So evolution
That's- it's
is evolution
You can't prove
is
it.
not proven.
Yeah, I was just going to say you can't prove evolution. It's a theory.
You might want to double check your terminology because you have laws. You have the laws of physics, which are patterns on the ways that the universe operates, and theories is what happens after your hypothesis. You have a hypothesis, you test it, and once it's been tested and shown to be the case, or at least reliable, then they call it a theory, and it's accepted as fact.
No, the evidence is accepted as fact.
And the collection of that evidence and the explanation of that evidence is called a theory.
Yeah, but you can't. You don't. The scientific term for proof would be like an explainable theorem where you can literally prove it, as in like for instance, like you can prove a like if we can get back onto topology because it is really cool, you can literally prove a 5-dimensional object is literally possible, where you can put your finger on one face and move it to the next face and hit all 6 faces of that cube. Does that make sense? So you can go to the opposite face by moving over one face.
Yeah, and that's fine. Like, that's not really what I'm
It's provable.
Yeah, that's fine. Like I said, I'm not really talking like, I wasn't trying to get into topology or anything like that. And hang on, let me do this real quick, because I've actually got...
But if it's a genetic theory, it's very difficult to prove, because you can't say, this DNA was replaced by that DNA, which is like because of this integration between these two species. You can't say that. You can just say, I think during the evidence, we've got all these different species. The evidence sort of suggests this, which is why it's still a theorem and not.
So my
proved.
piece is, hold on. We've got a friend of mine, Hackathon, who
Howdy.
works as a scientist, who will be able to help provide insight on the theory question.
It's not really a question. I was trying to explain the difference between proof, theorem, and theory, but like.
Just real
I
quick.
feel like we
how's
got a
my
bit
mic
off topic,
quality?
but go for it.
Does this work?
Yeah, we can hear you.
I can hear you.
Okay, yeah. In science, theory's not really a thing that you're going to promote to a proof. It's like a different whole category. You don't have this hierarchy where you do better and better, and then the theory becomes a proof. It's just the theory's the whole collection kind of thing. It's kind of like it's kind of like saying it's a subject. Does that make sense?
Strongly agree. You're explaining
Okay.
it much better than I am.
Well, but that's what I was saying, and you were
Alright.
saying, well, no,
You seem
that
to
like,
be saying earlier. Okay, yeah, go ahead.
yeah, because you were saying that we don't know that theory is true, but or the theory of evolution is true, but the theory of evolution is just the collection of all of the things, all of the evidence that we have, and is the explanation of that. And because it accounts for all of the evidence, we're accepting it as true. Like,
Yeah, but proof is a very different thing.
Yeah?
To prove
Proofs are
something,
very
you need,
specific
like,
things.
a very you need direct instructions on how to get from A to B to prove something.
correct me if I'm
Whereas
wrong.
Evolution is
in a
not even the
theorem,
kind of
it's-
thing that you would prove.
Yeah, correct me if I'm wrong, Hekaton. Like, science rarely proves anything, or everything in science, because it's instead of it being a deductive reasoning, like math is a deductive reasoning, and that's how you get to a proof. Science
beg to
is
differ. I mean, we've
abductive.
proved that fifth-dimensional objects can exist. We've proved that you can make.
Well, that's
energy
mathematics. It's
nothing.
Yeah.
purely analytical.
Yeah.
You're not really going to prove the kinds of things that you observe in the real world.
No, and you've never seen a fifth-dimensional object, and you will never see a fifth-dimensional object. But we have scientifically proved it. It is proved.
We've mathematically proved it. That's like a
Yes.
different category.
Yeah. And it's the same with what was the other thing I was saying? I can't remember. Fuck.
Okay. Well, I think I've said my piece.
Yeah.
Thank you.
But yeah, thank you
Love
for
it.
the help.
Thank you very much. Beautiful.
But yeah, so my piece is, and again, I do appreciate you coming up and sharing your insight. but I'm looking to keep this on the God conversation, so I'm going to go ahead and move on to the next guest, all right?
Okay.
All right. You have a good one.
Well, have a lovely one.
All right. All right. Let's see. I am terrible at this, but thank you everyone for, the follows and the likes. Let's see. It looks like we got Holy Gore, High Bear for the hearts, and Alex and Hypothetical Theist for the roses. Thank you everyone for that. Pablo, I do see you in the guest request box, but there's a couple of other people who have been waiting a little bit longer than you. But let me go ahead and move on. We got Monstera Terra.
Yeah, hey, what's up?
Hey, how's it going?
Good, how are you?
I'm doing all right. You at least over the age of 18.
37.
All right. What brings you up here today?
Well, your prompt.
Mm-hmm.
I'm an atheist, and I guess I strongly disagree that belief in God is rational.
Okay.
I guess my first question, if you don't mind me asking, would be which God? I'm going to assume you're Christian, but I'm still going to ask.
Yeah, and that's fine. So I am Christian, more specifically Catholic within the classical theistic tradition. But the purpose of the prompt is less of, hey, my belief in God is rational, although I'll often defer to it a little bit just because of my theological and philosophical background. But I'm more so saying that, hey, even just the philosophical God is rational. Because I'll encounter a lot of individuals. In fact, yesterday was very interesting. Had two people in a row who said it doesn't matter what you believe. All God beliefs are irrational. And that's what I was trying, and that's the position that I'm trying to push back against, is that no, it is possible, even if the God belief is wrong, for it to still have been arrived at for rational reasons.
Okay, and how? I'm sorry, you said that if God is like, what did you just say? Sorry, if God.
Yeah.
Sorry, just repeat that.
That it's possible, even if the God belief is wrong, for it to still be rational.
Okay, and why?
So, are you familiar with the difference between a valid argument and a sound argument?
Just refresh me so I don't.
Yeah, no
my
worries.
words.
No worries. So, a valid argument is any argument where the premises necessarily or the conclusion necessarily follows from the premises. In layman's term, it basically means that no logical fallacies were committed in the structure of the argument. Versus a sound argument is any valid argument with true premises. What that means is that if an argument is sound, we know that the conclusion is true. Now, what does the valid argument have to do with this particular topic? If I was to present to you an argument where, we don't know if each particular premise is true, but you lean strongly towards each of the premises being true, and it's a valid argument, then you would be obligated, even if you don't know with 100% certainty, to accept the conclusion, and you would be rational to do so. My favorite example is within physics. There are several positions as far as like whether there is an infinite past for the eternal universe, or if there is a first moment of the eternal universe. You have some physicists who are agnostic to that question, who haven't taken a stance. You've got some who argue that no, there is indeed a first moment, and you've got some who argue that no, there never is a first moment. And both of those groups are able to provide reason and justifications for their conclusions without committing any logical fallacies. Now, it cannot be the case that both of them are correct, only one of them is, but both of them are being rational. So rational here is not the equivalent of saying, hey, belief in God is true. it is possible for belief in God to be rational and atheism to be rational simultaneously.
Do you agree that atheism is rational?
I believe one can be rational as an atheist. Yes, absolutely.
So, if their belief in atheism is rational, would that make the belief in God irrational to that atheist?
I would disagree with that because of the fact that, like, I believe in God and I have a rational belief for God, yet I'm still able to see the rationality of the atheist position. Something being rational doesn't necessarily mean that you accept it. It's just that you can see the valid inference rule. So, like, for example, if I was to present an argument and I disagreed with one of the premises, or I thought one of the premises wasn't true, but you thought it was true, and I can see why you think that's true, even though I disagree. Like, say, for example, the question of free will and determinism. I disagree with determinism, but I can see why people accept it, and I can see how one arrives at determinism, and I can see the rational route that goes, even though I disagree with it. So rationality is not a question.
I understand what you're saying. Yeah, I get it. I mean, I could say that, like, it would be rational for somebody, but I'm atheist, but it would be rational for somebody who grew up in a Christian community, surrounded by Christianity, surrounded by the Bible and everything, that they would believe in it, right? I understand that. I see what you're saying here. Now, I guess what's kind of like hidden from the prompt here is that you don't only believe that belief in God is rational, but that the disbelief in God is rational as well.
Yeah. And like I said, what I'm really trying to push against is this idea that it doesn't matter what your belief in God is or how you arrived at that belief, it is always going to be irrational. And what I'm hoping to do is spark a larger conversation over time, essentially, by showing. What do
you find irrational? Sorry, I didn't cut you off.
Yeah, you're fine. I would say that if someone holds to a contradiction, that would be irrational. If someone posits the necessary requirements that would get them to change their mind, and then those requirements are met and they refuse to change, then they're being irrational. So, like, for example, there's a case where these flat earthers got I think it was a laser gyroscope, and they were using it to prove that that the earth doesn't spin and, is flat, because they were saying, like, hey, if it's flat, it's stationary, it doesn't spin, it doesn't orbit, so therefore there will be no drift on the gyroscope. But lo and behold, there was a drift on the gyroscope. And they tried to blame it on other things other than admit they were wrong. They stated the standards that would get them to change their mind. Those standards were met, and they refused to change their mind. That's not being rational.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah, I mean, that makes sense. Do you believe that there is any religion that is irrational? Even older religions, even like Greek mythology or Mormonism.
Yeah. So, so the way that I understand rationality is it's our approach of using the tools of logic and reason. So even like your example of, like, hey, someone who grew up in, a very Christian family with, and this was all they were exposed to. I would not necessarily call that a rational. That's an emotional reason to hold to a God position. Now, can they arrive at that belief even after growing up in that environment for rational reasons? Yes. But the asking about, like, the belief in and of itself, it's like, for example, like the Greek beliefs or the Greek mythology. Based on my study of Greek mythology, it wasn't the case that, like, the Greek god or the Greeks understood their gods to be physical creatures living on Mount Olympus. These were metaphysical manifestations of the ocean itself. So it wasn't the case that like Poseidon controlled the ocean. Poseidon was the ocean. He was the metaphysical energy, mind, and force behind the ocean. And so it was very...
But Zeus physically created lightning, right?
Well, Zeus was the storm and everything else like that. That's what I was getting at. It's like Zeus is the...
Gotcha.
Yeah. So their understanding of their gods is very different from how Disney Hercules portrayed it, essentially.
Gotcha.
So it's going to be very... Like, asking about the belief in and of itself, if the belief... Because a person can be rational. The structure of a belief system is what the person holds to. Like, because even within Catholicism, like, I'm a classical theist, but you have people who don't really hold to classical theism at least as strongly as I do. I hold to the hope for an empty hell, and you have people who hold to fewness of the saved. So it's hard for me to say if a specific belief system is irrational inherently, just because I would need to know a particular person's belief, and it's easier for me to say, okay, no, this is rational or this isn't rational, just because even within a singular belief system, each person is going to interact with that belief system differently.
I gotcha. I actually got to run to work, but I'd love to continue this conversation another time.
Yeah. And, shoot me a DM and I can get you the invite to my Discord, and that goes for anyone that's recently joined the chat. I do have a link tree in my bio on TikTok. Unfortunately, it's not something that you can just click. You are going to need to copy paste it, or you can just send me a DM and I'll be more than happy to get the Discord link out to you. But let me go ahead.
Oh, yeah, you.
Oh, sorry. I thought I saw you had had gotten off the app, and I thought you already headed into work. Sorry about that. But we'll go ahead and get Pablo. He's been waiting patiently. Hey, Pablo.
Hello. How are you?
I'm doing all right. What brings you up here today?
I just wanted to say I admire your patience with the guy you had maybe 3 times ago. And I really like the, yeah. I like the Aquinas argument, the style of Aquinas argument that you gave.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if it's his. But
no, it definitely takes a lot of inspiration from him, but it's my own creation.
Yeah, I would say I agree with it. The only thing that causes me some trouble is with Aquinas, he gives a good argument and then he says, therefore God.
Not quite. So in regards for the 5 ways, you have to understand that the 5 ways was written in the Summa Theologica. And the Summa Theologica was a textbook for theology students who were people who already believed, who were already Catholic. So this wasn't, the 5 ways were not meant to demonstrate or show that God exists. And the way that he concludes them isn't therefore God. The way he concludes it is this unmoved mover is what we mean when we say God. So it's more of a, hey, this is how I'm going to define and what I mean when I say God when I continue through the rest of the textbook. If you want his actual proof for God that Thomas Aquinas himself did, I would recommend looking at his work titled On Being and Essence, as that's really where he gets into proving God. And the other thing to keep in mind is that God is a title to whatever is foundational that has no further foundation.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. And the other argument I have is, do you think atheists could refute Aquinas arguing that it's the God of the gaps?
For the 5 ways, possibly. But the thing is that he wasn't trying to, like, if you look at the Summa, the very question before he gets into the five ways, he asks if it's possible to demonstrate God, and he answers yes. And then in the very next question, he says, here are 5 proofs. Now, we often miss it, but in Latin, those 2 words carried very different connotations, where a demonstration was basically, hey, it is impossible for it to be otherwise. Like, say, 2 + 2 = 4. It is impossible for it to be otherwise. That is a demonstration. A proof is, hey, here is the most likely explanation. It still could be different, but it's not impossible for it to be otherwise. So you could claim that it's the God of the gaps in that sense, but because he doesn't say definitively, this is God, but he closes it as, and this is what I mean when I say God, he's not creating a God or doing a God of the gaps. God of the gaps is closer to, hey, I don't understand how X works, therefore God. What he's doing is, there must be this, and when I say God, I mean this. So he's not pointing to a gap and filling God into it. He's pointing to a thing that has to be the case and then saying, and just for ease, I'm going to call this God.
I understand. Your argument, maybe I didn't understand it correctly, but is it applicable if the universe is eternal? Because if it is eternal and you go back, like, I don't quite understand, is that there isn't a need for God, right? If it's eternal?
So Thomas Aquinas made his arguments, and I'm doing the same thing for mine, to work whether the universe is infinite or not. And that's why I talk about dependency. The way that, imagine you're walking and you see a chain hanging down. And you look at the first link and you go, okay, how is this chain being held up? The next link. Okay, and how is that chain being held up? The next link, the next link, the next link. Well, you know that it can't, like, just because the chain is infinite, that doesn't mean that the chain would be able to stay suspended in air like that. Otherwise, it would all collapse, right?
Well, I can't wrap my head around it because it's difficult to really understand infinity. But like,
so
yeah.
What the point that I'm making is either effectively, let's say, the argument that I'm positing is either the chain is self-sustaining where it's able to hold itself up, or it's not.
Yeah.
If it is, and because what a lot of people will disagree or attempt to disagree with is the need for an independent thing. If the chain is able to self-sustain itself without the need of being attached to anything else where it can hang in the air on its own, that would be the independent thing that I'm talking about. And you'll have people who will claim, well, that's the universe. The universe is that independent thing. At the argument that I'm at right now, I say, great, we both agree to the need of an independent thing. Now let's explore what enables a thing to be independent. And that's, I do have the basic outline of it already, but I presented it to the Unapologetic team, specifically Dr. Blitz and Justin from Deconstruction Zone. And they showed a couple of areas that still need a little bit of work, not where it destroys my argument, but basically 2 things that I haven't accounted for in the argument. And the thing within that, though, is that's where the conversation is currently nowadays. Both sides, for the most part, agree for the need of an independent thing. What's disagreed on is whether it's a brute contingent thing, aka something that has no reason, not even itself, to be, which technically is an independent thing, but is a little bit different than what I'm going for. I don't think brute contingencies can exist, but that's a whole different conversation. The universe is a independent thing, or there's some other third option that you have the independent thing give its own reason for its independence. I suspect it's that third option, and it could very well be the case that the universe fits into that third option. But once we identify that third option, we can see if the universe fits in it or not. And if the universe does fit into it, congratulations, atheism is true. If the universe does not fit into it, then then that means that it's something else. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. Thanks for clearing it up.
Yep.
And wait, I think I had something else. You find it a bit frustrating how Aquinas mentions mainly just the God exists argument and not that Jesus is God?
Do I find that frustrating? Not particular.
1 second, I have to leave. Sorry,
Okay.
I'm very sorry.
No, you're good.
Okay. Yeah, sorry. Goodbye.
Bye. Well, I currently don't have any guests in the request box. But let's see. But thank you everyone for the likes. Let's see here. But yeah, if anyone wants to come up, either just to chat or have a conversation, let's see. But yeah, anyone wants to come up just to chat or have a conversation, you're more than welcome. But let's see. Let's see. But no one shows up in the next bit. I might just end it early, but still been trying to figure out how to get streaming to YouTube, but TikTok doesn't want to play nice. I still wonder where Ross Soul is. He's been throwing down the gauntlet. And I told him when and where I go live, but hasn't been showing up. All right, looks like we got Ella coming up. Hello.
Hi.
Hey, are you at least over the age of 18?
Yeah, I am.
All right, and what brings you up here today?
Okay. Well, why do you believe that belief in God is rational?
So, in order for something to be rational, it just means that you're using logic and reason to arrive at it. And someone can hold a valid argument, even if the conclusion isn't true, but because they believe each of the premises are true, they're being rational in that. And belief isn't contrary to knowledge. Knowledge is a subset of belief. Knowledge is usually defined as a justified true belief. Belief is just one's orientation to a proposition. So one can hold the proposition God exists as true and have rational justification for that position. Something can be rational and still be false. So just because someone holds something for a rational reason doesn't mean that they are correct.
Do you think that belief in heaven and hell is rational?
I mean, you can believe in God and not have a belief in heaven and hell. There's Spinoza, who held to a pantheistic understanding of God, didn't have a belief in heaven and hell. You had, so you have different, in fact, even the early forms of the Israeli faith did not have a belief in an afterlife, and they still believed in God. So the heaven and hell question isn't necessarily tied to the God question. Heck, there's even even I think Buddhism doesn't believe in a God, yet they believe in an afterlife after you reach nirvana through reincarnation.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, you have anything else?
Um. Mm, hmm. Not really. I mean, I think like it, the universe is weird. It's weird.
Absolutely. Yep.
It's really weird. It's weird that we exist, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And it's also weird that like anything exists. And it's like it's so weird that I want to say like I mean, I believe in God, but it's so weird that I want to say a belief in a heaven or a hell or an afterlife is like actually rational, because that would also be just as weird, you know? But at the same time, it feels like such a jump too.
I mean, like I said, all rational means is just that one used logic and reason to arrive at it. So, that's the, that's, could one have a rational justification to believing in an afterlife? Sure. But it wasn't necessarily tied to the God question.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, thank you. Have a good day.
You too. All right. Looks like we got Noetic Cosmos. Hello.
How you doing?
I'm doing all right. Are you at least over the age of 18?
Yeah, I'm 42, mate.
All right. And what brings you up here today?
So, I don't know if you actually want me. I believe a God exists. I was brought up Catholic, but I don't believe in any religious gods anymore.
Okay.
I became an atheist for a while, maybe 5 or 6 years, study all the arguments, Dawkins, Hitchens, etc. The more I learned about how the universe worked, the more I found it irrational for a God not existing. And then I became agnostic for a while, where I didn't know either way.
Yeah.
But I kept studying. The more I learned, the more I saw this beautiful, grand design that works in perfect mathematical harmony in so many ways. There's over 200 constants. I started to realise that not believing in the existence of a God is completely irrational. But what form would that take? Because I didn't believe the religions. The primary reason was the Adam and Eve thing, where we were supposedly created at one specific time. Then I saw there are over 13 species of human beings at least that have walked the earth within the Homo genus family. I started to realise, right, so if that's not right, then how can I believe in the rest of it? So anyway, that was the thing that triggered my atheism that I had for a while. But
Gotcha.
As time went on, I've got a very complex combination. Fundamentally, I believe a God exists.
Yeah.
But my combination is combination of non-dualism. So what that means is there is no us and an external supernatural deity. The deity, or what compromises God or composes as God, is everything. It is one source consciousness, where all consciousness, every individual sentient being is an individual excitation of God as a universal consciousness that feeds into that overall consciousness to ascribe meaning through its own life and provide new data and information to its overall evolutionary consciousness. So that's non-dualism.
Yeah.
Next is analytical idealism. That's where I believe that reality is fundamentally mental. I won't go into massive detail, obviously, but I can break down all of the senses in granular detail and show how it's basically a simulation. Then there's cosmopsychism, which is the belief that the universe itself is fundamentally conscious. Like small evidence for that, look in the mirror, you're an emergent property of it, made of its underlying 17 quantum fields, and you're conscious of yourself and it, therefore it is conscious. That's a small localized example. And next would be quantum panentheism, which is basically the quantum realm, or the underlying unified quantum fields, the 17 fields, is what brings everything together. So in a nutshell, it's non-dualistic analytical idealism with cosmopsychism and quantum panentheism, and that compromises God, or it makes God.
Yeah.
That's my beliefs.
No, you're fine. Like,
It's
there's
very
someone
deep.
that there's someone that I speak to who's working on something in regards for that, like, you know, the idea that God is, you know, the sum total of all, you know, of all minds. That's not my particular viewpoint, so I'm probably butchering it, but it sounds very similar to his position.
So I'll tell you why I believe that, right? The Japanese Institute of Material Sciences, they discovered structures in the brain called quantum microtubules. These are real things. So quantum sounds scary, but all it is the smallest part of an indivisible whole. That's all it means, right? So it's like as small as you can go, where you can't find anything more complex or smaller that makes up the whole. That's all it means, right? So in the brain, these little tubes vibrate. They vibrate to match the field frequency or resonance of the electromagnetic field which your brain works on. That field is one of the 17 fields of the quantum unified quantum field. So it kind of acts like an antenna. Like a TV will pick up it picks up the electromagnetic field in the form of radio waves, right? And the brain does something similar, but only at a quantum level, far more complex. It picks up the same EMF and then filters that EMF, so the data within it, for the human experience. Now, where is the human located? That's the default mode network of the brain, the DMN. So if you switch the DMN off, I won't say why for TikTok-friendly language, but there's ways to do it without ending yourself. You basically stop the filter. There's no longer a filter for the underlying universal consciousness, so you start to see a lot of the complex stuff behind the scenes, the geometric shapes, the fields, like you start to see this stuff, right? So basically the brain is a filter. It receives the electromagnetic field, filters it for the human experience, and then it becomes a transceiver, because you then transmit your intent through thought and conscious action. So rather than you being separate as one person, you've got the illusion of an ego, and when you switch that off, you become the whole again.
And so Noetic, you know, I do appreciate you up here. I'm mostly looking for,
bit too deep.
No, you're good. Mostly looking for people who, you know, do disagree with the prompt to have conversation.
No bother.
And
I'll
I
let
do
you go then.
you have a good one.
You too. Cheers, bye.
All right. So we've got Underdraymon and then the anti-racist. Underdraymon, I think, was up first. Oh, looks like he got disconnected. Let's see. So we'll go ahead and bring... Hello.
Hey, what's up, man?
How's it going?
Good. So the statement that God is irrational or is rational, I do agree with you that it could be rational, but because the universal understanding of a God is very fluid, I kind of wanted to, stay in this realm because of the claim. But do you believe that belief in a Messiah is rational?
You mean like specifically within the Christian understanding, or?
Yeah, or even the universal understanding of a human prophet vessel for a god.
Yeah. So, well, the thing is that like, especially within like the Jewish faith, I was speaking with someone, and there's different. The understanding of Messiah that they have is not necessarily like the incarnate God. It's someone that is sent for each generation, is what someone was describing it to me. Someone that is sent for each generation to help respond to what's going on within the world and the community. The idea of it being God incarnate is uniquely Christian. So the Messiah question, like as like a prophet, you do find that in a lot of different religious organizations, or this idea of like, hey, we need someone to guide us back onto the right path. It's within the Christian organization or faith tradition where you get that idea of this specific Messiah for all of mankind is God incarnate.
Well, yeah, that's where I mean, when we're talking about Messiah, we are going to stay in the Christian realm just because it's the most influential.
Right. When I was asking about it, if it was, it sounded like you had said.
It was more of like a human divinity kind of deal. Like, can humans actually have some sort of divinity from a higher power?
So the understanding within,
yeah.
So the understanding within the incarnation is not that God infused divinity into a man, but rather took humanity onto himself. So you've got the roles backwards a little bit. And this is one of the things within the Catholic faith that's called a mystery. And what that means is it doesn't mean that it's irrational or can't be understood with logic and reasoning. But logic and we can't use logic and reasoning on its own to arrive at the incarnation. It's something that was revealed to us, and then we can understand deeper within it. But it's not something that we can use logic and reason on its own without revelation. So can it be rational? Yes. But showing it being rational to someone who doesn't accept the revelation is going to be tricky.
Right. Yeah, and that's kind of like the next step, which would be like looking for evidence of said, and I think that's kind of where Christianity kind of has its fall. Honestly, when people get into the depths of studying the origins and actually looking for proof and evidence, they're going to come to forks in the road that something is not rational anymore or illogical at that point. So honestly, how would you? Because I understand your position as well, and I think the Catholic Church, the reason why it's gone so far as it is now, is because it does have good reasoning, and stating the mystery factor is literally the unknown factor that no one knows. That's the agnostic factor that I have to respect, honestly.
So in regards for that, like how to go about it, there's different ways to go about it. My particular approach is something I don't see a whole lot. And if I was to go through it, it would take a long time to go through each step and do it justice. What I can do is I can send you a podcast appearance I did. It's almost like 2 hours long or something like that. Where I go into that, where you can listen to it, listen to some of the common objections that someone might bring up. And then if you've got further questions after that, I'd love for you to either come back or even just DM me the questions that you've got.
Yeah, well, honestly, my goal in this and I'm not, I'm going to be completely honest when it comes to like this debate with God and all this stuff, is to simplify it as much as possible and find the best wording for everyone to fully understand and come to the same table. I like the way you and Ian use your philosophy. I'm not that big a fan of philosophy, though I do understand it. I took classes. To me, it becomes like a very we get on the table and we actually discuss things that are unknown. But I mean, you have great answers.
Appreciate it.
I just feel I still disagree. I don't think it's too rational. So, but again, you come out respectfully. So, but I will have more questions. Go ahead and send me that if you can, please.
Absolutely.
And then we'll get back to it. All right. Thank you, man.
Absolutely. All right. We've got. Is it Yotai? Let's see, trying to connect. Let's see. It's spinning. Oh. Looks like he disconnected. All right. We've got Euler, who I believe has been up here before. Hey, Euler.
Hello.
How's it going? What brings you up here?
I have a quick question. I think makes this whole thing irrelevant in my opinion. It just turns it back to what really should be debated. I mean, let's suppose that you can show that all religions are false.
Okay.
What's the point of this?
Even if all religions are false, you could still have a God.
Right.
You don't.
But let's suppose we can demonstrate they're all false. What is the point in believing that God is rational? What is the point to holding to the belief that believing in God is rational?
Well, that's what I was getting at, is even if all religions are shown to be false, you can still have a God existing and all religions be false. They're not tied to each other.
I know. Yeah, I know.
So because they're not tied to each other, and I want to believe true things, you would need to show that the God claim is false in order for...
No. We're saying it's rational to believe in God. All religions are false.
Mm-hmm.
And, okay, at that point, how could you even demonstrate that God exists, by the way? Like, how would you even know that it's
Spinoza's
Spinoza's
God... Spinoza's God is not tied to any religion. And if that's the particular God that exists, then I would believe that God, because that is the true nature of reality, and I want to believe true things.
No, but you don't know it's true. You just know that you're rational for believing that a God might exist. If there's no religion that's true, then how would you have evidence to know that God exists?
Because, like I said, at that point, the religion and God question are not tied to each other.
I know.
Like,
But-
so
but- okay.
you saying all religions
is
are false.
religion?
All religions are false. Now what? That doesn't change the argument that I've been relying on. That doesn't change Spinoza's argument. That doesn't change any arguments for gods that are not tied to a religion. So you haven't
Okay.
changed anything.
Listen, how does God let us know that He exists? Through evidence, like if there was a God that exists that wanted us to know He exists, He would have a messenger or he'd have evidence or whatever.
So the Spinoza God doesn't desire us to know Him, doesn't have a messenger, doesn't have a religion.
Okay, and can you determine that He exists?
Yes.
No, you can't. How would you?
Logic
determine that He
and
exists?
reason. Logic and reasoning.
You can only determine that it's rational that He exists.
And if the premises are true, then the conclusion is true.
As far as I know, you don't have an argument that God must exist. You only have an argument that it's rational to believe that God exists.
Well, I'm working on an argument that
Maybe-
shows that God must exist.
I don't think you're going to be able to do that.
I mean, ultimately, what I'm trying to show is that existence exists. And exists.
Isn't that trivial?
Well, that's kind of the point. Therefore, if God is this existence that exists, then God must exist.
Okay, hold on. And why do you label it God?
Because God is simply
Isn't that-
God is a title to refer to the ultimate grounding of all of reality.
Okay, that's not what most people mean by God. If you mean that,
That's what most philosophers. That's what classical theism, which is what I belong to, mean by God. So the fact that other individuals have different understandings has no relevance to this conversation. There's deism.
If you find yourself having to explain what you mean by God, then clearly your definition of what God is different from what most people think of when we say God.
I have had to
You
explain
understand, we use words because what we mean by the words is agreed upon by most people.
I have had to explain to multiple people, one of them today, on what a scientific theory is. I have had to explain to people what valid and sound is multiple times today. There is an agreed upon definition, but the ignorance or lack of awareness of the academic terminology doesn't mean that is a invalid definition.
I mean, you're telling me in theology what people mean by God is not the all-powerful, all-knowing.
In classical theism, yes, because you have what's called negative theology, especially in classical theism, where you can't say that God has properties because of divine simplicity, where God is only existence that exists. And so when we say that God is all-powerful, what we're doing is we're describing how God appears to us, not that he has something that, like, where he's existence plus power. That is not what's being said. So you have a lot of people who misunderstand the high theology terminology being used, but that's how it's been used since at least Moses Maimonides by the 11th century. You even can make an argument that it's been used even longer before that, because divine simplicity was introduced to the Abrahamic faith around the 50 BC by Philo of Alexandria.
Okay. Now, okay, fine. Let's suppose that, fine, you have determined, or you've provided an argument that shows that this pure existence is really true. Okay, it's a thing. Okay, and we also have that all religions are false. Now what?
then that's like I'm basically Spinoza and Spinoza's God. Like I'm a deist essentially. He holds more specifically to pantheism, but there's also deism where it's that this God doesn't interact with reality but is separate from it. You also have Neoplatonism, which is the idea of the one, and we all emanate from it. There's different ways of understanding it, but none of them are a religion.
Like like at this point, a thing exists that doesn't interact with us. That we just, if it want to put an argument hypothetically that you deduce that it exists, we would even like it wouldn't change anything to.
If Pluto did not exist, would that change anything in the way you live your life?
I don't think so.
Okay. Then why do you believe Pluto exists?
Because I've seen pictures of it.
And, well, so because it's true, right?
Well, because
it's
I've
true
seen
that
pictures of it. If I did,
yeah, but
no, but if I,
that's the evidence that shows that it exists and that it's true that it exists. So your question is effectively, why should you believe in a God if it existing or not existing has no change on your life? Same question can be asked about Pluto. Same question can be asked about the North Star. The same question can be asked about a lot of other things that don't have an effect on your life, but you still believe and accept as true because they are true.
Okay. I mean, sure, that's enough. I think that's a good response, but I'm curious to see if so it still remains to be seen if you can prove that such a thing is true.
But that is what I'm working on.
Sure. All right. Anyways, thank you.
Absolutely. All right. So I did see in the chat that some people were asking about having conversations with me. As the Frog Girl pointed out, I do these lives pretty much every day, 9 to 11 Central Time, Monday through Friday. But I do have a Discord. I do have a link tree in my bio that you can join. Unfortunately, you can't just click it and it brings it up. You are going to have to copy and paste it. You're also able to send me a direct message, and I'll be more than happy to get that sent over to y'all. But I think, depending on time, we've got time for maybe one more guess. Looks like Yotai came back. Let's see if... There we go. Have I been saying your name correctly? Is it Yotai or...
Yodi.
Yodi. All right. Are you at least over the age of 18?
Yeah.
All right. And what brings you up here today?
Just wanted to see, do you believe that God is omniscient? And if you believe that, could you explain what that means?
So, as I was kind of touching on with the previous guest, I am from the classical theistic school of thought. And the relationship between divine simplicity and the omni properties is is very different from how most Protestant Christians, and heck, even some Catholics, are going to present it. The understanding of God within this system is that God is purely simple. He is only his existence. So what that means is he doesn't have properties. I can't say that God is good in a literal sense, because now what I'm saying is that God is existence plus goodness. I've now made him composite instead of simple. So God doesn't have knowledge in the way that you and I would understand it. But when we have this experience of the divine, we experience something that seems like it's analogous or similar to what we would call knowledge. But in reality, what we're actually experiencing is his essence itself, which is his own existence. So he wouldn't have knowledge in the literal human sense. It's an analogous statement meant to refer to and help us understand how his essence is revealing itself to us, or an effect of his essence.
In what sense does God have knowledge?
In the sense that he is the source of all things that can be known, essentially.
Is
so-
God more than one thing?
No.
Is God triune?
So the persons are the possession of the essence, and when we're talking about the divine simplicity, the persons don't multiply the essence. The persons possess one and the same essence, and that one and same essence is singular.
Are Jesus, Father, and Holy Spirit all the same thing?
They are all the same being.
Okay, so do you just appeal to modalism?
Nope.
Okay, so is God all whole with no parts?
Correct.
Yeah, that is, and I don't mean this with a negative connotation, I mean this in a literal sense. That is literally nonsensical. Our only concept of wholes are sums of parts.
So, but that's the thing, is it's like you take a sum of a part, and you're able to separate that sum into its parts, correct?
No, our concept of a whole is a sum of parts.
Well, but that's what I'm saying is we have that whole, correct? And we know it's a sum of parts,
Okay,
correct?
so what is the whole that is God?
The whole that is God is the indivisible part that occurs after you take each part and break it down. Each whole, break it down into its parts. Now each of those parts is its own whole, which can then be further broken down, and so on and so forth, until you get to something that is indivisible, such as in math and geometry, axioms. You cannot further, or the foundational definitions like, say, a point. You cannot further break those down into further parts. Those are, quote unquote, simple because they just are.
So is Jesus fully God?
Jesus has two natures within his person. So, like, as an example, you and I are simple persons because we have one nature. Jesus is a compound person because he has two natures that don't intermingle.
Is Jesus fully God?
Yes, like I said, he has two natures that don't intermingle.
Okay, Jesus is fully God. Is Holy Spirit fully God?
Yes.
Is Father fully God?
Yep.
Would God be God if he was not triune?
Possibly.
So it's possible for God to be God.
I mean, the thing is with it, like what you're talking about for possibility is, could there have been a state where, like, I don't see why it is necessary for God to be triune. I don't know how that works, and I don't know, and I'm not going to sit here and claim that I know how that works. But what I am going to say is, as far as like the God question and the omni traits, those apply to the essence. And the question here is not about whether or not the Trinity is rational, but the God question. Because the Trinity question is about Christianity, and I'm talking much earlier than even the Christianity question. I'm talking foundational source of reality.
Okay, so what is this whole that can be divided?
That can be divided. I mean, you and I have my right
God.
hand.
God.
So God cannot be divided.
Well, then he would not be a whole that can be broken into parts.
That's my claim.
But if God is... No, I think you said it the other way earlier. You said
I
that
did not.
God...
You said the only way we can come to a whole is by its parts. And I said, so we have the whole, and we break it down into its parts, and each of those parts is an individual whole, and we're able to break those down, and we're able to keep going down until we get to something that cannot be further divided. That whole that cannot be further divided is God.
So is God everything?
There are some positions out there that hold to that. Pantheism, Spinoza's God is the most famous example of that.
Are you a pantheist?
I am not, and I disagree with that. But all I'm saying is not, hey, which God claim and which God belief is true. I'm just saying that one can believe in God and have a rational reason and rational justification for that belief.
So, if God is that which is, you're basically a foundationalist. So how have you determined that God is not everything?
Because in order for a thing to be what it is, everything that makes it what it is needs to be present. So in order for me to be what I am, everything that makes me be what I am needs to be present, so I'm dependent on those things. In order for something to be foundational, it cannot be dependent on anything else. Therefore, it is not the case that God is everything, but rather everything is dependent on this foundation.
Well, no, you're saying that, but if God is the foundational...
Is the plane that the triangle resides on the triangle itself?
If the triangle is made out of that plane, yeah.
The triangle is not made out of the plane. The triangle resides on the plane and is made out of points and lines that exist on the plane, but is not the plane itself.
So what is it that we're subdividing to an irreducibly complex point, which you call God?
It would be an irreducibly simple point, not complex, because complex is about parts.
Okay, so an irreducibly simple point. What is it that we're dividing?
Existence itself.
Okay, so I am something that exists, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I am composite of this, I guess, this divinely simplistic thing, right?
No, you have other parts plus existence.
Okay,
so otherwise what you're
what are the
saying,
parts that are not existent?
No, not that you're not like you have parts that are not existence, but you have...
You distinguish the parts from existence. Like, what does that mean?
Well, no, because what existence is, like, because keep in mind, existence isn't a predicate, but existence is the precondition for things to exist.
Okay, so then the parts could not be distinguished from the existence of the parts.
Yet, I mean, we distinguished the parts of the triangle from the plane itself. I am saying that existence is the plane.
Yeah, you're just asserting that, but a part cannot exist.
Do you deny that? Do you deny existence as the precondition?
Parts from existence.
Yeah, because otherwise you would need to say that existence is a predicate, which has been shown not to be the case.
Okay, what does it mean for a part to be but not be at the same time?
Can I describe every property of a fictional character?
Say what?
Can I describe every property or every aspect of Spider-Man?
So how you would do that is you would use reference to the world that we experience. Language is ostensive.
That's not what I'm asking.
Language is fundamentally ostensive.
That's not what I'm asking. Can I describe everything about Spider-Man?
Can you describe everything about Spider-Man?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what you're asking me.
Can I describe his powers, his personality, his characteristics, his height, weight, hair color, eye color, everything that makes Spider-Man be Spider-Man?
I don't know if I would say that's everything, but conceptually, sure.
I gave a list and then said, and everything that makes Spider-Man be Spider-Man. I didn't say that list was exhaustive. I gave that as some examples and then concluded with, and everything that makes Spider-Man be Spider-Man. Can I do that?
Well, I don't think you could give everything that makes Spider-Man Spider-Man. I think that there is a it depends on perspective, or not perspective, perception. And I think that it's fuzzy logic. The identity of Spider-Man would be fuzzy logic, and it would just be whatever we agree is Spider-Man intersubjectively.
So you think it's impossible to give a list of all of the properties and all of the traits of what makes Spider-Man be Spider-Man?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think that we could agree on what we perceive as being Spider-Man, and it would be a pragmatic point. But yeah, I think that the identity of Spider-Man, it would be hard to exhaust how everything is defined, and so we would appeal to fuzzy logic. And we would just say what is pragmatically useful for
So here's the
identity.
thing. So here's the thing. Hard is not the same as impossible. I never said it would be easy. I'm merely asking if it's possible.
No, I don't think it would be. I don't think.
What is?
You're a foundationalist. I'm not.
I'm not asking about like the foundationalist aspect of things. I am asking, is it possible to list out all of the characteristics such that if one of those was gone, it would no longer be Spider-Man?
Intersubjectively, yeah, it would just depend on how we identify.
Okay.
And how we would identify as an appeal to fuzzy logic based on perception, based on the zoom on that thing.
So that's fine. So we've now established that we can talk about those different parts. But just because we can talk about those different parts doesn't make Spider-Man actually exist.
Well, okay, so this is where language is fundamentally ostensive, and the things that
does Spider-Man exist? Yes
is
or no?
just based on our perception.
Does Spider-Man exist? Yes or no?
In what sense?
Does Spider-Man exist? Yes or no?
In what sense? You need to tell me in what sense, because you could straw man me if you don't.
I'm not strawmanning you. If you say yes, I'll ask you to clarify. If you say no, then we agree. So yes or no, does Spider-Man exist?
Depends on the sense. Yes and no.
So either
Depending
he
on the
does,
sense.
that's violating the law of excluded middle.
No, it
either
isn't.
he does.
No,
either
it
he
isn't.
does.
Listen.
I am
This
asking you to
depends
pick
on the
one.
identity of the thing.
So I am
which is the
asking you
sense.
to pick one sense for us to use in this conversation. What
Oh,
sense?
okay. So I'm the one
So-
who's determining the sense.
So I am asking you, does he exist? Yes or no? And then depending on your answer, I'm going to get further clarification so that then we can continue this conversation along. This is not meant to trap you or anything like that. So
Sure.
does Spider-Man exist? Yes or no?
Yes.
Okay. And in what sense does it mean to exist then?
To, it would be, we are able to perceive things, and we are able to categorize those things that we perceive. And so we perceive what we identify as humans, and we can illustrate humans, and we can perceive colors, and we can perceive webs. And so Spider-Man would be a human that is illustrated using like pencils and stuff or in movies, and wears a red suit and has and can shoot spider webs out of his wrists.
So you are using exist in the sense to say that if we can have a concept of it, it is a kind of existence, and that existence is being given by us onto that concept.
Say that again.
You are saying that there are different modes and ways for a thing to exist, and Spider-Man exists because we are giving him existence because he is a concept and we are the creators and originators of that concept.
I'm not reifying concept, though. I think that's the issue.
I'm not saying that I'm not saying that concepts.
My response is yes, but I'm not reifying Spider-Man as a thing that exists. And
in reality, I'm not saying that.
Yeah.
Because here's the thing. When you say that there's different modes of existence, now we've gotten to this part of, okay, so now there's different ways for a thing to exist. There's existing as a concept, and then us existing.
Hold on. But again, I want to clarify. When I say existing as a concept, I am not reifying that as something that's distinguished from the physical.
So you are saying that Spider-Man physically exists?
In the sense that it is... In the same sense that if you draw a picture on MS Paint on your computer...
So I am not talking about Spider-Man on the comic book itself. I have this idea of the character Spider-Man. I have not drawn it. I have not written it down anywhere.
Yeah. Yep. So I would say that is physical information in your brain. Yeah. It would be a packet of information that you've categorized in your brain as being Spider-Man.
Okay. So what is the difference then between Spider-Man existing physically and me existing physically?
Let me think about that one moment. Well, I would say that in language, it depends on how you would categorize this thing. So, for example, if you were to go to like a place where somebody is cosplaying as Spider-Man, that would be
so you're changing the question. I asked, what is the difference between the concept of Spider-Man that you say physically exists as packets of information in my brain? And so you're saying that physically exists and me physically existing. What is the difference?
I guess it depends on what sense of difference you're looking for.
I'm asking you because this is not my worldview. So I'm asking you to justify and explain this worldview because I see something because there is a clear difference between the Spider-Man that's existing as a concept in my brain, as those packets of information that you claim physically exist, and me physically existing. To me, there is a difference. You claim, so I'm asking you, is there a difference for you? What is the difference between those two, or are they the same?
Yeah, let me think about that. Again, I think it depends on how you think of difference. I think I can answer this in multiple ways.
Oh, I can answer it simply. The difference between me and the Spider-Man and the concept of those packets of information that exist physically in my brain is that I am the source of and origin and the provider of existence to those concepts, not the other way around.
Yeah, if you're meaning that like, yeah, and I agree with that in the sense that and is an extrapolation of the empirics. A concept is, so to rationalize and to conceptualize, I think, is an abstract, which is an extrapolation of the empirics, the concretes.
Yeah, that's fine.
And so I would say that you are concrete in that. Yeah, sure. I'll say this.
I agree with that.
To answer your question, the difference is that you would be a concrete, whereas Spider-Man would be an abstract that is an extrapolation of the concretes.
Yeah, and that's fine. So most people say that only concrete things exist. And abstractions are acts of the mind.
Yeah, but I don't distinguish the mind as something that's not physical.
That's
Or,
again,
sorry,
that's
I don't,
fine.
I don't distinguish the mind as something that is distinguished from physical.
That's
So I'm
fine.
getting like a bunch of calls and stuff. Sorry.
So the point that I'm getting at is there is a, if you're, because you were trying to say that like, if we can conceive it, it has some form of existence, even if it's different from our own. So now we have different
Everything's-
modes and different levels of existence in your worldview.
Say that again. Say that one more time.
Because you were saying that Spider-Man exists. However, he exists as a concept or an abstract
Mm-hmm.
within my mind.
Yep. And the mind being the physical body and brain. Yeah.
Yeah. And so now we have different levels of existence, different modes of existence. You were asking.
Yeah, the concrete versus the abstract.
Yep. You were then asking, hey, how can I have these parts that don't have existence if existence is something that's being added onto it? Well, didn't we just do that with Spider-Man?
So I said, how can we have or I asked you, how can we have parts that don't have existence?
And then existence is added onto that. Did we not just do something similar with Spider-Man?
So I think you're reifying a concept. I don't do that.
I am using your terms and your language because you have agreed with me every step of the way here. And now as soon as I show you the parallel between what you push back and something that you've affirmed, now you're trying to walk back.
I don't think I am trying to do that.
What is the difference then between me abstracting all of these different parts and giving existence to it in my mind as a concept?
That's the issue, is when you say giving existence to it.
Well, then how does this Spider-Man exist if there is no mind or no one to bring it to existence?
I think that it exists as packets of information.
Yeah, and
which are physical things.
Well, hold on. But those packets of information exist separately. Like you said, we had the idea of webs. We have this idea of humans. We have all of these ideas. But do those packets of information exist in a unified whole outside of the mind?
I guess if you illustrate it, sure.
I'm asking the concept. The illustration comes after the concept. You don't do the drawing before the concept. So, did those packets of information exist outside of the mind as a unified whole?
So I'll say this. I think that there are concretes, and then those concretes are extrapolated, and then from the extrapolation, then they can be illustrated.
So, hold on. Does those concrete packets of information exist as a unified whole outside of the mind?
Hold on. I'm getting like 15 calls and text messages. Ask me that one more time. I'm sorry.
So, you have these packets of information. Humans existing, men existing, aunts and uncles existing, spiders existing, spider webs existing, red and blue suits that are way too tight existing. Do all of those exist in a unified whole outside of the mind?
Yeah, if we illustrate it, sure.
The illustration comes after. The illustration comes after the concept.
So it would go from those those individual concretes, and then our mind would be able to store that information, and then that information is extrapolated.
So that's
into
the step
what we
that I'm.
say
That's
is the concept of
Yeah.
Spider-Man,
So
and then we
that's
can
the
illustrate from there.
So hold on. As you said, we can illustrate after we've done it in the mind. I am at the mind step. You're trying to jump ahead. I am at this step. So we're at step 1. It exists separately. Step 2, I am asking, does it exist at step 1 as a unified whole?
I'm not running. I do have to get my daughter ready for school. She's got to start school in about 30 minutes. Ask that question one more time. I'll respond to that. I followed you, and I'm happy to continue this conversation later today, but ask me the question one more time.
At step 1, where we have those packets of information outside of the mind, do those packets of information exist as a unified whole at step 1?
The packets of information? So what are the packets of information you're referring to?
Humans existing, men existing, aunts and uncles existing, death existing, sense of responsibility existing, spiders existing, webs existing, super tight red and blue spandex existing.
Sure. Okay. Yeah. So we presuppose that those things exist independent of the mind. Yes. And I think that you and I both do that because solipsism is unfalsifiable. So yeah, sure. If we grant that those things exist independent of mind or objectively, yeah. So those packets of information exist, and then we, as what we would describe as concretes, and then we extrapolate them.
Okay. And then when we extrapolate them, we then combine them together in the mind, correct? Into a unified whole that we then call Spider-Man.
Sure.
Okay. My question was, until that mind does that extrapolation and that combination into the unified whole, did that whole exist before the mind did that?
No, I think that whole would be the sum of those parts.
Okay. So therefore, the mind is giving that existence because it is taking those parts, combining them into a unified whole within the mind. Therefore, Spider-Man is receiving its existence from us, from our mind.
Sure.
Okay. So when you were asking, how can my parts have non-existence and all of those non-existent things be added together if they didn't exist? We just did that with Spider-Man.
How could those sums... And remind me, so you said, because the conversation we were having...
The whole, yeah, so the
that
whole...
God is the whole, that
well,
is
the God,
divinely
God
simplistic thing.
Yeah. You and I are also a whole.
This is what the issue is. Okay. So what it is that all of those things are perceivable. The concretes are perceivable, and then those are extrapolated out. So what that means is that God would be something that these things that we perceive, if we keep dividing them, eventually we would reach a fundamental substance. And so getting back to that conversation, if God is the indivisible thing that all of these things are derived from, and they're just extrapolations of, then God would thereby be everything. And so this is just pantheism. And so therefore, if everything is God, and I am a composite of these things that is God, then I am God.
So, one, that's not quite what I was saying. Two,
let's continue this conversation later. I've got to get my daughter ready for school. Hey, I did enjoy this conversation, and I'm sorry I have to leave midway, but I followed you and would love to continue it later.
Absolutely.
Yeah, hope you have a good one.
You too. All right. I'm guessing he was a big name because the live went nuts whenever he joined. But I do have to end it there anyways as well, because I got to start getting ready for work as well. I got to make sure I'm ready for work by in an hour, and I try to finish up by 11. I mean, Russell, you say that I'm running, but you haven't even requested up. Like, I don't know how that's running. But thank you all for coming. I will be live again tomorrow, 9 to 11, and hope you all enjoy the rest of your day.